Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Cormac Smith, and I work in the Ireland's permanent representation to the EU in Brussels. I am the lead here on EU careers, as well as working with the presidency planning team, preparing for the Irish presidency of the Council of Europe at the end of the 2026. So I'm delighted to welcome you to our 19th in our series of webinars focused on EU careers, and the first of 2025. So Ireland's prosperity is closely linked to our EU membership and our partners within. Having a strong connection and representation at the EU institutions is critical, which is why we have a career for EU's Ireland strategy that was launched in 2019 and revamped then in 2024. So the Department of Foreign Affairs and us here at the REP are continuously working to promote careers at an EU level. And these webinars form an important part of seeking to increase that representation. Our previous webinars have discussed EU career opportunities, such as opportunities in Irish language, scientific research, data protection, economists, and crisis management, many more. And these can be watched back at any time on the Department of Foreign Affairs YouTube channel, as will this one. So in December of last year, the European Personnel Selection Office, or EPSO, opened up a selection competition for administrators at 85 level in the field of translation. With an excellent starting salary and posts that will largely be based in Brussels, this will sure be to be an attractive and exciting role, and I'm sure our speakers will speak to this more. The deadline to apply is the 14th of January. And hopefully today's webinar, or I'm sure it will provide more information on this specific competition, and we will hear from colleagues currently working in translation across the institutions. The Department of Foreign Affairs does provide support to Irish citizens applying for jobs in the EU institutions at every step of the process. That includes access to online practice material for computer-based tests and case study training, and one-to-one interview training, depending on the competition stage. So please do contact us if you are applying for this competition or for other EU competitions at eujobs@dfa.ie. So now I'm delighted to welcome our speakers today, Audrey Flynn, Laura McMahon, and then finally Cohen Hendricks joins us from the European Personnel Selection Office. And Cohen will give us an overview of the specific competition process, while Audrey and Laura will speak to their experiences of being translators in the institutions. And then they can hopefully answer any questions that you might have on the Slido platform. So thanks very much to our speakers today for joining us today. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us online today also. As I said before, you'll have a chance to ask your own questions through the Slido platform by going to the webpage of Slido and using the code #EUJobs to access the system. So you don't have to register and anyone can do it. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Audrey, to tell us more about her own background, her work as a translator in the relevant institution, how her career progressed, and anything else relevant. So Audrey, thanks again for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Cormac. And thanks to all of you here for joining us. Just to stress again, we are really here for you to give you whatever information, background, insights you need. So if there's anything we don't cover, don't be shy about putting questions in the chat. Nothing is too basic or too banal. How did I end up in the institutions? I don't have any sort of fancy special background. I'm one of 9 children from County Waterford. I went to UCC and did a BA in French and German, and spent all of my summers working abroad. And then I spent a year teaching English in the south of France on the assistantship programme. And then I went to DCU and did a master's in translation. After that, I was lucky enough to get an internship in one of the EU agencies, the European Foundation for the Improvement of Living and Working Conditions, which is in Dublin. And following that, I went to work for a couple of years for a German software company, SAP, based in Heidelberg. And that was a great job, and I was happy enough there. But when the competitions were announced then, this was back in 2002, for EU translators, I knew I definitely wanted to do that. So back in those days, which is maybe before some of you were even born, for all I know, the competitions were very long, drawn out, and they took about two and a half years. So I joined the commission in 2005, and I've been working as a translator in the English language department ever since then. So yeah, I started off with French and German. Those were my competition languages. My L2 and L3 for the competition. And I also had Irish as an extra language and a little Spanish from beginner Spanish at UCC. But since I've been with the Commission, I've been lucky enough to get training in a whole bunch of different languages. So I've added Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Danish, Finnish, Swedish, and I'm also learning Chinese. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to work if you are interested in languages, because the training is amazing. I've also had training in a bunch of other things like legal language, editing. I do a lot of editing work now as well on texts that are written in English in the Commission by non-native speakers and by native speakers who are not natural writers, because just because you speak a language doesn't mean you can write it as clearly and as fabulously as our good citizens of the EU deserve when trying to access information. So yeah, some highlights of my career have been doing things like being involved in recruitment. I was on the selection board for the last competition for permanent officials as English translators. That was in 2013, believe it or not. So these opportunities for permanent EU jobs do not come along very often. So if you are interested, I really do urge you to get your application in before Monday, when deadline closes at 11 o'clock Irish time, 12 o'clock Brussels time. In fact, I would say get it in a little bit before if you can, just in case you have any IT issues or the system crashes or anything like that happens. But it really is a great opportunity. The last time we had this permanent competition, we had over 1,300 applications. We don't expect to get that many this time because Brexit. That means people who just have a UK passport cannot apply. You have to have an EU passport to become permanent official. So that has reduced the pool of potential applicants. At the same time, though, because we have this mobility within the institutions, so if you pass one competition, then you're basically in for life, right? You can move around. I could move from the Commission to the Parliament. I could move from, to the Council, to the Committee of the Regions. There are a lot of things I can do. But it also means that other people who want to have a permanent job in the EU Commission, people who are perhaps already working on contracts or as temporary staff, both in translation and in other parts of the Commission, will be interested in using this competition as a sort of scenic route in, because it is possible to be recruited to other departments as well. And if you're already on a contract in the finance department or in the tax, whatever, and you're good enough at languages to pass a translation competition, you can get on a reserve list this way and be recruited from there. So I would take it seriously, the competition. I would be adding a list of useful resources and tips, and later on that the Perm Rep is going to send you. And as Cormac mentioned, the DFA can provide you with test material. Take them up on the offer. The tests are hard. The verbal reasoning should be quite doable for most people interested in a translation competition. There is a cliche of translators not being great at maths. I know I would struggle with the numerical reasoning side of things, and you are on a clock. There is time pressure for these tests, and you do have to pass them to get through to the next level, which is for us the more interesting stage of translations. The reason we don't mark the translations first or do the translations first is because they all have to be marked by humans. It's very labor intensive for those of us who will be involved in the marking. So this numerical, verbal, abstract reasoning, you have to do this again because of Commission mobility, because you could move from a translation job into working in tax or customs union or ECHO or any of these things where those are very real applicable skills. So everybody has to be able to jump through those hoops. But then the language reasoning test, which you would do in English if you're applying for the English language translation competition, that will also help us sort out, eliminate people who don't have the right level of English. That's not a test you can really prepare for. It's something you will know if you're a literate person with who reads the newspapers, who's got a high level of English or whatever language that you would be doing. But if there is anyone listening who would be good for the French language competition or something else, for example. Anyway, I have so much to say about this job because I just love it. Maybe it's best if I, what was I saying about other career highlights. Cormac mentioned the upcoming Irish presidency. which will be the end of 2026. Back in 2008, I was seconded to Paris for the French presidency then, and that was a really interesting period where I got to be involved. I was managing the website that we had at the time, the translation of the website in 5 different languages, and I had a lot of great opportunities to meet people and do great things. And we also have regular exchanges of translators with the European Central Bank in Frankfurt and various ministries in different countries, and very often we'll send a translator to go and help out the staff of whatever country has the rotating presidency of the EU as well. So it's really good for opportunities in that kind of thing as well. There, obviously, you move up. This is a civil service. You move up through the ranks as you go along. So I joined at AD5 back in 2005, and now I'm an AD12. So that's been a nice career progression and salary jump over the years as well. I don't know if Cormac mentioned the basic salary when you come in at AD5. It's 5,672 euros as a starting salary. And this year you would expect to have 43.5 days off with the basic leave rights and the public holidays, commission holidays, and weekends. So that already is quite nice. We have a lot of variety in the types of texts we translate, and obviously variety in the languages, which you might not get so much if you're working just for a company. Yeah, so I think my main tips are prepare. You can Google EPSO tests and find links of helpful resources. You can put EPSO into YouTube, and a lot of videos with helpful materials will come up. And as I said, I'm going to send Parliamentary a list of other resources I think might be particularly helpful for you. There are books available. Anybody who's already working in Brussels or Luxembourg will know about these EU test books and will have a copy. They're not cheap. They're 55 euros for the latest one, but they are an excellent resource if you are serious about practicing for these, because anyone in the bubble will have done it. I know we have at the moment at least 6 contract agents working in the Commission's English language translation department who've been working with us for years. We'd love to have them on a permanent basis. So they will be going for this competition. I know all of them have these books. They're doing the trainings that our unions offer. So you can't just expect to show up and that it's going to be a walk through the park for the competitions, but they absolutely are worth it. There's never been a better time, or there's never been less competition with Brexit having eliminated a lot of people who previously would have been interested. So now I'll hand over to Laura so she can talk us through her experience, and I'm here for questions.
Thanks, Audrey. That was really interesting. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm a translator in Luxembourg. I've made a presentation just to sum up a little bit of the work that I do. So I'm going to share that with you now. Are you able to see the screen there?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Again, we have your notes page as well, so if you want to switch to, perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks Cormac and Sinead for inviting me to talk today. I'm working in the Parliament, so unlike Audrey, I'm working as an Irish translator. I'm working here for 5 years now in the European Parliament. I come from Galway, from County Galway, from Gort originally. And like Audrey, I also studied languages in UCC. So I did German, Italian, and Irish. So I did the World Languages course. Some of you might be familiar with that. It's a relatively new course. And the great thing about it was that I was able to study 3 languages for degree level, rather than a traditional arts degree that just enables you to do 2. So that was definitely a brilliant experience because it allowed me to study 3 languages to degree level. So it definitely gave me an edge, I would say, when I started to pursue my career in translation. So after I graduated, I came across an internship scheme that was organised by the Department of Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. So this internship scheme still exists, and well, if for those of you who have the Irish language, I would highly recommend it. I know this is a competition for English, but in case mata ein Gaeilgeoirí ann, Mullum Gomor on Internach Sin. So I did that traineeship for 10 months, and it was a brilliant experience because it enabled me to get really practical hands-on experience translating legislative texts for the European Parliament. So at the time, a lot of our translation work as trainees consisted in translating documents from the acquis communautaire, which basically refers to EU law that had to be translated from until the derogation was lifted on the Irish language. So regulations, directives from different EU institutions. So it was a really hands-on practical experience. I got really valuable experience translating legislative texts and acquainting myself with the style of legislation, which is quite technical and specific. So in general, I would recommend, if you can do a traineeship, I know you're going to be applying to this competition, but for anyone who's still in college, who's watching today, I definitely recommend doing a traineeship because it's a great way to get very hands-on experience and to improve your translation skills. So then after I finished up with my internship in 2020, I started working as an intercultural and language professional. That's my official title. So I've been working in the European Parliament ever since. And yeah, I suppose I can echo what Audrey said about really enjoying the work. I find it really interesting. We translate a wide variety of political and legislative texts. So they say that the European Parliament is a world leader in translation because it is responsible for translating documents for 27 different member states, which have 24 different languages. So it's a very multilingual environment to be working in. I have colleagues from all different parts of Europe who I speak different languages with. And as an Irish person, this is something I don't take for granted, the fact that it is so multilingual here. So just to mention, Luxembourg is where the Secretariat of the European Parliament is located. So Strasbourg and Brussels are where all of the political work gets done. So that's where where the committees have their meetings, where the plenary and part sessions take place. But Luxembourg is where all of the administrative work and the kind of background work gets done. So we have translation here, but we also have DG for finance, and we have infrastructure, logistics, personnel, human resources. So that's kind of, that's maybe why you don't hear about Luxembourg as much, or you don't see it as much in the news, because it's kind of more the administrative background work. So then in terms of my own working languages, so I speak Irish, English, German, Italian, and French. So I've recently added French to my working languages, which I was able to do via language courses here in the Parliament. So yeah, like in terms of the work that we do, it's really varied. A lot of our work would be linked very closely with the political and legislative work of the members of the European Parliament. So the European Parliament is made up of 20 different committees, and translation is really essential in order to facilitate the lawmaking process, because you have over 20 different committees, and all of the MEPs are members of these committees, and all of the MEPs have a right to make amendments to this legislation in their own native tongue. So we have a system of PIVO languages in order to speed up the translation language. So all of the documents will be translated into 6 languages, which are the most spoken in the European Union. Those are English, Polish, German, Italian, French, and Spanish. And from there, they get translated into this lesser spoken languages. It's because we have so many different languages, it wouldn't really be time efficient to translate every language from one minority language into another. So we have this relay system of languages to speed up the translation process. So it's really interesting. I find that the work that we do for in terms of the political side of things, it's really interesting. It's very topical. We translate topics that quite often would make the news. So sometimes you have to do research about topics, especially if you're not too familiar with them. So you're constantly learning, and it's you have the impression that you're contributing to somehow the European project in your own way, which is very rewarding. And then in terms of the other roles and responsibilities, so in addition to the legislative and political work that we do, we also translate documents that contain citizens' language, as it's called. So within the DG for translation, we have a new directorate for citizens' language, which was created about 4 or 5 years ago. So this directorate concerns language, we'll say documents that would more deal with citizens' language, so language that's more accessible, that's closer to the citizens. And the types of texts that are translated would be podcasts, news bulletins. We also subtitle videos for the European Parliament site. And also the European Parliament has a Lux Film Prize that it's organised for the past 4 or 5 years, where it shortlists different movies, and our translation units are responsible for the subtitling. So that kind of work is really interesting, and it's very creative. So it's nice to have a combination of doing the more formal procedural work like legislation and political resolutions, but then to also be able to be a little bit more creative with the citizens' language texts. So in addition to the translation tasks that we have, we also engage in terminology work. So for example, sometimes it happens that we're translating documents and maybe there's a term that hasn't been translated yet, especially in the case of domains like AI or, I don't know, cryptocurrency. Maybe there are new terms that haven't been translated into other languages. So we have to come together and decide on what translation we would find for this term in particular, and then we also liaise with other translation units in other institutions to come up with a uniform term that we can all apply, because consistency is really important to our work. As well as this, we also mentor trainees. So we have, as I mentioned before, we have trainees that come twice a year. So we have trainees that come in October and trainees that come in March. And we work closely with them. We revise their work if they have any issues, if they have any challenges in terms of linguistic matters, or if they're struggling with something, they come to us. And this is also quite a rewarding part of the job, because it allows us to share our experience with them, and they get to learn. But it's also good for us, because a lot of the time we're able to keep on trainees. So this is quite a fulfilling part of the job. We also revise other colleagues' translation work, and we revise translations that are completed by freelance translators. So these documents that are outsourced, and we assist with internal training courses. So as Audrey mentioned earlier on, there are really wonderful opportunities for learning and for further career progression. So as EU officials, you have access to a wide range of different courses. We have a platform called EU Learn, and you're able to do courses in different areas that range from economics, law, project management, and languages. And of course, it goes without saying that translators are really actively encouraged to participate in language courses to add to the working languages that they have. So in my own case, when I arrived in Luxembourg 5 years ago, I didn't speak any French, but I was able to partake in various language courses during the past 4 years, and now I'm going to finish my language courses in French this year, and I also got to complete a 3-week-long course in the south of France this year as part of my work. So that was a really wonderful experience, and it helped me to gain a lot of proficiency in the language. So there's so many great opportunities if you're into languages, if you want to learn different languages. It's such a brilliant place to be. And as I said, you're surrounded by people from so many different countries that you really do get the chance to practice your language skills and to speak different languages on a regular basis. So then in terms of career progression, as Audrey mentioned as well, like a lot of people would do a competition maybe in translation, but they can go into different sectors from there. So we have this program called mobility, so that allows you to go into a different profession or maybe change institution. You can also do courses in the meantime to expand your skill set and to get experience in different areas. So this is a really good thing. Entering the institutions, if you are successful in passing a permanent competition, it is brilliant because you have the possibility to work in the profession that you have, but you can also change, and it's a great way of kickstarting your career and getting access to different language courses and other training courses. So there's so many opportunities that we have, and we're so lucky to have them. So yeah, that's one thing that I personally love about the job, is that we're always learning. I just wanted to mention our traineeships. So we do have traineeships, as I said, that are organised from October to March and from March to August. Our next intake will be March. However, the closing date for that is already gone. But if you want to apply for the October traineeship, that would be launched in May. The application procedure, and I know we're talking about the English language, but I do want to emphasize the fact that it is really valuable to do a traineeship in any area of the institutions, because it is a great way to get practical experience and to network, to meet other people, and to be in the loop about opportunities that are arising. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not going to go into recruitment. I had a slide on recruitment, but I'm not going to go into it because I think this will be discussed later on. But I'm just going to leave my professional email there in case anyone wants to contact me, or if anyone has any questions. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Cúrmaile maith.
Thanks, Laura. That was very, very useful and helpful presentation. I'll provide some comments, but I'll let Kuan go through the process first, and then I can give an overview and get into the questions. On to you now, Kuan.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks a lot, Cormac, for organizing again this session, and welcome from my end as well, everybody. Well, you've heard really a lot and very insightful contributions from both Audrey and Laura on the day-to-day life of the translator and all the possibilities you have once you're inside. I will now walk you through the procedure to get inside, okay? So I will share a couple of slides as well. Basically, the slides you will see, you can also find them on the competition page on the EPSO website, with me talking in a little circle about these slides. I'll do that again now, and maybe a bit more extensively. And if you have questions, of course, you can then ask them. I will share the screen right now as we speak. There we go. I will, oops, something went wrong there. Can someone confirm you can see my slides? Can you see them?
They've just gone grayed out, but
I see them, but you guys don't?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We did see your notes page a minute ago, but now it's just a grayed out screen.
I stopped sharing. I'll try that again. Just a minute. I have a double screen here. Maybe that's the issue. Share. I'll share my whole screen maybe. Share. You see them now?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah, now we're seeing your slideshow mode.
All right, perfect. So the competition to select translators, of course, you may have noted that this is actually a set of 8 competitions in 8 competition languages. So you have to pick one language. I guess most of you here today are interested in the English language translators competition, but you can't pick any other. But again, you can only pick one. So you have to choose which one you apply for. In the column at the right-hand side, you see the number of successful candidates we're looking for. And as you can see, they're quite high, right? 126 English speaking translators is quite a high number. So as stressed already by Audrey, for instance, if you hesitate about applying, I would say don't hesitate, because this is a major opportunity for you to get in. And once you get in, as explained by both Audrey and Laura, you can do a lot of things, right? You start as a translator, but if you say after a number of years, I don't want to keep working as a translator, there are so many more opportunities through internal job mobility to go any path you like while still being employed under this EU umbrella. So the eligibility criteria, you need a university degree of minimum 3 years, basically a bachelor's degree, awarded at the latest on the 10th of April. So by that date, you need to have your degree in your hands. And to specify, this degree does not have to be in languages, right? It can be any university degree. Basically, why do we do this? Because we need people from any background to translate, because we have to translate material from different domains. And that's why we open up this competition to people with any field, but it must be a bachelor's degree at least, of course. We do not require professional experience on top, so straight out of uni, you can participate to this competition. Again, this is an entry-level competition, which we do not offer a lot, right? So this is really a chance you should take if you meet these criteria. Of course, there are language criteria. You need to speak 3 languages, because as a translator, you will work from at least 2 languages, 2 source languages into your main language. And you see in this grid that if you go for the English language translators competition, you have the choice between any of the remaining languages for both your language 2 and 3. Okay, so you pick any combination works. In blue there, you see the level required. Now these levels, so C2 for your language 1 and then C1 for language 2 and 3, are indicative, meaning you do not have to prove your language level to us by any certificate or diploma or so. We do not require that. You taking the tests in this language and then, of course, succeeding them will give us proof that you master the language at the level required. So these are just indicative levels. The selection procedure has a course, a typical course. Everything starts with an application phase, of course, which is currently ongoing. Everybody who applies and who validates his or her application by the deadline will be invited to the testing sessions. Okay, everybody who applies gets tested. You see that you will sit 5 tests. You will sit these tests remotely. So basically, you do not have to travel to Brussels or to the capital to sit these tests. You basically take them from your home computer, and you will sit these tests over 2 days. If some people have already been following us and have applied for other competitions with the EU, they will have noticed that you sit these tests in one single day. But that is why actually the reason why we do that is because you usually sit 3 tests. Now for the translators competition, since you sit 5 tests, it'll be a bit too much to sit them in one single day, and that's why we have split it over 2 days. Now these 2 days will not be 2 consecutive days. They will be about a week apart. All right, so you will be notified somewhere at the beginning of February when these dates will be. So we do not have the exact dates yet, They probably will be, say, in March or April. But as soon as we have the exact dates, of course, we will publish them on the website and you will be notified about them. So about 1 week apart, you will have these 2 dates. Very probably, but again, this still has to be decided, you will sit the 3 first tests on this slide on day 1, and then the 2 last tests, translation and revision, on day 2. But again, this may depend on the number of applicants that we get, how we divide these 2 days. Once you have sit and taken all your 5 tests, you will get your results. So meaning when you sit your tests on the testing dates, you will not know your intermediate results. Okay, so after finishing your reasoning skills test, we will not tell you what your result is. So you basically go on with test 2, 3, 4, and 5, and only at the very end, we start scoring the tests in a certain order. I will come back to that in a minute, and then you will be notified about your results. And the best ones, of course, are then placed on the so-called reserve list, which is the list of successful candidates, and they can then be recruited by any of these different bodies that need translators. Can be the Commission, can be the Parliament, can be the Council, the committees. I mean, there are different translating bodies in all these institutions, and they all need, of course, to fill their vacancies. So let me walk you through these 3 different stages in detail. As said, everything starts with an application. Therefore, you need an EPSO account. If you don't have one yet, you can easily create one on the homepage of EPSO. If you do have an EPSO account already, do not create a second one. You are only allowed to have 1 account. So you use that account for all your future applications. Okay. This being said, you can apply to as many opportunities that you are eligible for. Every single competition is a unity, one entity, I must say, and the results do not affect each other. So if you apply for this translators competition and say you fail, this does not prevent you from taking part in other competitions later on. Okay, so you can apply to anything that we offer as long as you are eligible. You apply on the website of EPSO. You can apply in any of the 24 official languages, and you should validate your application by Tuesday the 14th, noon Brussels time. Okay, do not miss this deadline, because if you don't validate in time, you are already out before it really starts. So don't miss out there to secure your opportunities, of course. We will then invite you to upload your supporting documents, so basically your degree, by the 10th of April this year. As said, everybody who applies gets invited to these testing days, and we have 5 tests to be taken, right? The first one is the reasoning skills test, where you will sit 3 tests, a multiple choice question format. We test your verbal, numerical, and abstract reasoning skills in your language 1, so your competition language, so I guess English for most of you here today. You see the number of questions asked, the duration that you get to solve these questions, the scoring is there as well. And as you can see, the last column, this is a pass-fail score. So you need to score at least 22 out of 40 combined. Now, this is interesting for you guys, because I think that some of you may, for instance, think that their numerical reasoning skills are not that good. And there's no harm done. Even if you would fail for the numerical reasoning part, you can make up for your score by scoring well on, for instance, verbal and abstractions, just to give you an idea, right? As soon as you score 22 out of 40, you're good. This is what it means, pass-fail, right? If you have 22, 23, 39, no matter. You just need to reach at least 22. If you don't score 22, if you score less than 22, you are, of course, out, and then you cannot longer compete for a spot on this reserve list. So 22 is the threshold. You see here a link to a sample test page. Now, I really suggest you go there and you check out our sample tests. You will find material on not just these reasoning skills tests, but on every single of the 5 tests that we make you sit. Train this. You have heard Audrey stress the importance of training. She mentioned also this ultimate EU test book, which you can purchase online. This is, by the way, not an EPSO publication. It's a commercial book, but anyway, it's indeed a good book to train yourself. The more you practice, the better you get at these kind of tests. Note also that there is a time factor involved. You have to be able to solve these questions under time pressure. And by practicing this, by doing this a lot, you get better at this, right? So don't miss out on practicing for these tests. The second test is a language knowledge test. Again, we test your language 1, so your competition language here in multiple choice format. You see on this slide what we mean by language knowledge. We test your linguistic proficiency. This time, your score will be ranked. So first of all, you have to reach at least 13 out of 25. But your scores will be ranked, and this is important because only the ones who score the best are the ones of whom the next 3 tests will be scored. I will come back to that in a minute. So it's important to score as highly as possible here. Okay. Again, have a look at the sample tests available on the website. Third test is a language comprehension test of the third language. Okay. Again, multiple choice. You see what we mean with language comprehension explained on this slide here. This time the pass score is 6 out of 12 minimum. But here again, you should try and score as highly as possible because your score matters here. I'll come back to this in a minute as well. Then, of course, there is a translation test from language 2 into language 1. This is, of course, the big thing. You get 1 hour to do so. It's about a 1-page document that you have to translate. You will find samples again on the website, scored on 100. Threshold is 50 out of 100, but again, try and score as highly as possible. You cannot use dictionaries to translate. You cannot use paper dictionaries. You cannot use online tools to translate. I know this might look strange because, once you start working with us, you will, of course, have access to all kinds of tools online and offline. But for this testing, we really want to test your brain in a way, right? So you will sit this test purely on using your brain. The fifth test is a revision test where you will get a text translated from language 2 into language 1 and you have to revise it. Half an hour to do so, pass score 20 out of 40. Same thing, you cannot use any dictionary. So these are the 5 tests. To wrap up, how does the scoring work? As said at the beginning, you have to pass this reasoning skills test. Just 22 out of 40 is enough. The score you reach here does not count in the overall score. Then we start scoring the language knowledge test, right? Where you need to score at least 13 out of 25, but the scoring is ranked. So score as highly as possible here, because this matters in scoring the next 3 tests, right? And your overall result is basically the sum of these 3 last tests, right? That's why scoring as high as possible matters in these 3 last tests. So who are the people who are successful? Well, the ones who score the closest to 152, which is the maximum score to be obtained here. These people end up on the so-called reserve list, and this is the basis for recruitment. So once this list is established, we hand over these lists to the recruiting bodies, the institutions, and then based on their vacancies, they will have a look at this reserve list. There is no ranking on this list. So in a way, everybody is equal, but of course, everybody has his or her own CV, right? And based on the CV, the recruiting body will invite 3, 4, 5 people to a job interview to see which one of these persons is best matching the vacancy at stake. And this is, and I want to elaborate a bit on this here, where your CV comes into play. So to apply to the competition, you just need a degree and 3 languages. But of course, if you have a bit more than just a bachelor degree and 3 languages, make sure you mention this in your CV because the recruiters have access to the CV. And if you speak a 4th or a 5th language, this may come in handy because, as you've heard, for instance, Laura explained, she works in now, 4 or 5 different languages. In this competition, we only test 3 languages, but if you speak more languages, we may use, or you may use, these languages even professionally as well. So this is how the recruitment works. If you are chosen to a certain job, you can start working with us. If not, you stay on the list of successful candidates on this reserve list, and you may be offered another job later on. In principle, the validity of a reserve list is 1 year. So to give you a rough timeline of this competition, and again, I say rough because we don't have the dates set yet, but I think personally that we end the application period now on the 14th of January. Say a couple of weeks later, somewhere beginning or half February, you will be invited to these testing dates, which will probably be in March or April somewhere. Then we communicate the results. It will be somewhere probably May, June. And we may publish the list of successful candidates, say in July. That's my guess, right? It can be a bit before or a bit after, depending. Once we publish the list, say in July, the institutions can start recruiting these people off the lists, and they have 1 year to do so, right? Now, imagine that after 1 year, not everybody's recruited. What we do then is we extend the validity with another year. We do not close down lists easily, right? So we can even extend again and again, really to really give everybody a chance to get recruited. Now, I also suggest you to, when you apply, at the very beginning in the application form, you will find a tick box mentioning something like, I give consent to EPSO to share my details with my member state authority, something like that. If you tick this box, we EPSO, we can indeed share your details with the member state authorities, and they can then reach out to you to guide you and to assist you throughout this competition and to prepare you for it as well. This was already mentioned by Cormac up front. I really suggest you do so because the Irish government authorities, they do really they are quite active in trying to prepare their candidates, their Irish candidates, for competitions to be able to be successful and come and work with us, since Ireland is an underrepresented country in the EU staffing. So we have, in a way, too few Irish staff, and we want to up the numbers of Irish civil servants, of course. This being said, everybody is equal in a competition, right? So if you take part in a competition where language is not an issue or not a criterion, you basically compete with the whole of the EU 27, the 27 member states, and there are no national quota, right? The best are the ones who end up on the list of successful candidates and then get hired in the end. That is why I can't stress enough, this competition is really a good chance for you guys to get in, because you are only competing with the English-speaking community, basically mainly Irish people, right? So this is really a chance to get in. Two more suggestions. Please do read the notice of competition carefully. This is a legal document which you will find on the competition page, explaining this whole procedure a bit more in detail and more lengthy than what I just did now. If you still have questions, of course, you can reach out to EPSO by contacting us through the web form, which you find on our website. Follow EU Careers on any of the social media available, because there we keep you up to date on future opportunities as well. You might be interested in an opportunity we will publish in July upcoming, which is the Generalist AD5 level competition, which is one competition, again, open to everybody with just a bachelor's degree. So you do not need professional experience. Any degree, any field of studies is welcome to apply. But this competition is open to the 27 member states. So there you compete, of course, with many more thousands of applicants. So it's a bit tougher statistically to make it. I will stop sharing here, and I'm happy to, of course, take questions, Cormac, if there are any.
Okay. No, thanks, Koen. Thanks for that comprehensive overview of the process and other items that would be helpful, very helpful to people that would be applying for this role. And it's good to get a complete understanding. Actually, this links to one of the questions that someone asked, that really you just need a degree and 3 languages, proficiency in 3 languages. And having a broad base of experience, whether that's in the arts or political science, as long as you can speak those 3 languages in true translation, then we would encourage you to apply. And then Kuan and Audrey and Laura also spoke to the significant value of practice. And while these tests can be somewhat daunting, they have been simplified over the years, and it is now pass-fail for the competency side. And we here at the Perm Rep and headquarters back at home do provide testing support material. So do get in touch with us at eujobs@dfa.ie if you want to access those materials. Now, I'll give a very brief overview of what everyone said from Kuan, Audrey, and Laura. The value of doing internships, particularly Blue Book traineeships and the Schumann traineeships, are all of very great value for getting into the system and applying for jobs from there. I can't stress the value of being based in Brussels and how that can then advance your career at the EU level, even if you're at a temporary agent or contract level. And there are a significant amount of Irish people at temporary agent and contracts here based in Brussels or in the other institution areas. And also Laura and Audrey spoke to you that there are significant career opportunities and self-development opportunities, and the training opportunities for other languages are there, and they would encourage you to learn those languages. And so they invest significantly in people that come to work in as translators so they can develop those translation skills. And then also the packages of salaries and the quality of life is quite good in the areas where the institutions is based. And I will ask a question itself for Laura and Audrey to go further into that. And so, yeah, I'll start going into the questions now that people have asked. But first, Audrey and Laura, can you comment maybe on the quality of life, maybe of people wondering what it's like to even work in Brussels or Luxembourg or even Strasbourg? Very briefly comment on what is life like there, and maybe how connected it is to Dublin or at home in terms of people would be worried about being disconnected from home, how easy it would be to get home from there.
Sure, I can go first if that's okay, Laura. So yeah, I started off in Luxembourg actually and spent 3 years there before I moved to Brussels. And Laura can tell you more about what it's like now, but it is a beautiful place. Any of my friends who have kids say it's a great place to raise kids there. There's European schools you can put your schools into. All of that exists in Brussels as well. Brussels is super easy to get home. There's at least 3 Aer Lingus flights a day and 3 Ryanair flights a day from the main Brussels airport. There's more from Charleroi. So really it's practically a bus at this stage taking a flight home. Also, we are allowed to officially work from your home country 2 full weeks of the year. We do normally at least 2 days in the office a week, and then the rest working from home. Like right now, I'm in my house in Attendees, working from here. I love Brussels. It's not maybe everybody's most beautiful city ever, but it's a very kind of eclectic mix. It's very international. Luxembourg is also very international, of course. Luxembourg are very close to Germany and France, but the same Brussels. We're an island in the middle of Europe. We're not an island. It's it's the opposite to being an island. Everything is so easy. You've got Aachen, Cologne. There are multiple flights to multiple places with high-speed train to Paris and to London. It's so easy to get around, and our EU salaries really, we're blessed. They go a long way. I will say they go longer in Brussels than Luxembourg because rents are lower here, mortgages are lower. But really, sometimes I feel almost guilty about how fabulous my life is and how often I could go on trips and holidays and things because it's a very, very healthy salary. We pay EU tax. We don't pay a tax to the Belgian government, so this is a different tax rate. If you are recruited from your home country, you get a 16% expat allowance. If you have kids, or you are the chief wage earner in your partnership or whatever, then you get a household allowance, you get a family allowance for your kids, and European school systems to put them into. So it's very, very easy to exist here. It's very international. You meet people from all over, but of course we have a huge Irish community as well, and it's easy to meet people there. And now I'll let Laura have the floor because I could go on and on. I love it. I'm a fan. I'm not leaving.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, no, I mean, well, I'm based in Luxembourg, so Luxembourg is a lot smaller as a city, but it's also like it's really international. And I suppose I'm someone who doesn't love big cities, so I like the fact that like it's really well connected. We have free public transport, and it's really international. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of cultural events. It's very easy to travel. Like we have the TGV that takes you to Paris in 2.5 hours. It's also well connected to Germany and France. You're less than an hour from the German and the French border. So I really like it. It's small, but it's international. It's quite safe, I would say. The only downside is that it is more expensive than Brussels, rent especially. They are talking at the moment about bringing in an allowance to give EU officials up to a certain salary level an extra amount of money per month to assist with accommodation. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but it would be brilliant if they did. I guess this competition is for 85, which, you know, it is a great salary package. However, if you are looking into settling in Luxembourg, you would struggle to find a place to yourself on that salary, or else you would have to make sacrifices to find somewhere. So if they did approve this package, this allowance, it would be great. But other than that, I suppose once you're in, if you become permanent, you know, your salary is only going to increase from there. And no, I really like it. It's maybe not as well connected to Ireland as Brussels is. We definitely don't have 3 flights a day, but we do have Ryanair that fly a few days a week to Dublin. We have Luxair as well, but they're more expensive, so you kind of would have to book well in advance if you're flying with Luxair. And yeah, I really like my quality of life. In Luxembourg, it's like in the middle of Germany and France. So I'd say we have like the German efficiency of trains coming on time, but we also have this French charm. We have, you know, the nice French cuisine, the boulangerie, and, you know, we have like a mixture of the both cultures. And then we have all the expats who are living here as well. So I really like it, and I would recommend it as a city. It's not as big and maybe dynamic as Brussels, but I really like it as a city.
Great. Thanks, Laura and Audrey. It is great to get a sense of what the quality of life, because it's important considering it will be a big move for people to come from Ireland or Irish people living elsewhere, to get a sense of what life is like in Brussels or the other areas where the institutions are based. I'll go to one of the questions actually now that someone has asked on Slido, perhaps more for Kuan. So this one is said, are there certain language combinations for L2 and L3 that are more desirable than others? And if so, is this taken into account during the application process?
I see Audrey raising her hand.
I'm dying to comment on this one. Do you mind? Do you mind?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you some intel off the record that, well, it is on the record. Obviously, I'm speaking here, but so I've been involved a lot in recruitment, and in the English language department of the Commission, we do have people working from all languages except Irish and Maltese. At the Commission, the Irish translation department handles translation into English and into Irish, you know, from Irish into English and from English into Irish. We don't do it in our unit. The same with Maltese. They do English into Maltese and Maltese into English. So we would not be looking for people who have got, if you, and historically this has happened in the past, if you do this competition with, say, German and Irish as your competition languages, we will probably not take you from that list, because we need to take someone with languages that we actually work from. So if, let's say, and this isn't even a hypothetical case, someone has done the competition with German and Irish and they've listed French as a third language, that's still not good to us, because they have to have tested in that. So if you were someone who has got, say, Spanish, Italian and Irish, test in Spanish and Italian and add your Irish on the side, and that's an asset, and that's great. But, you know, okay, if you can't, I can't speak to the other institutions. Maybe Laura can speak for how it is at the Parliament. I can't speak to how it is at the Commission, but that's not something that's certain. Also, like for the notice of competition, it says for the other competitions, you can have English or French and any other language. There is no way they will recruit you if you are applying for the Spanish competition and you put French as your second language and then Portuguese as your third and English as your fourth. That's just not going to happen, because 99% of the translation that is done in the French department or whatever, or from the other languages, is from English. So that is what's not going to be said in the competition. It's not going to be written down in a document, but because of the reality on the ground, I think if you do that, you're minimizing your chances of actually getting called off the reserve list and in for an interview and in to be tested. So that's what I would say. If you've got any languages we find more difficult to recruit from, like Lithuanian or Polish, that's amazing. That's amazing. You really want to test in your best languages so that you score higher and come through. But at the same time, yeah, we love the languages that are harder to find. People who are really good in English from. Sometimes we end up recruiting Finnish people or Polish people or Slovenes into work in the English department because it's hard to find native English speakers with the right level. All our work is revised, so it is up to the right standard. But I think if you do a competition with Irish as your L2 or L3, it would be better to have it as an L4. And that's my little pro tip.
Thanks, Arthur. Kuhn, do you want to add on to that briefly?
Well, no, I mean, as Ulrich rightly put, theoretically, any language combination will be marked and scored, and there's no, I should say, there's no order or language order when sitting the competition. But indeed, when it comes to being recruited, then of course your language combination makes sense in the way Audrey explained.
Perfect, thanks, Kuhn. I'll go on to just another question now. We're running a little short on time. So again, probably more process question for yourself, Kuhn. If you gain a place on this competition reserve list, can a laureate apply for 85 roles outside of the translation sphere?
So I see Audrey saying yes, yes, yes. Well, at first, so since this is a translators competition, right? The idea is to start as a translator, right? That your first job would be a translator. And every institution who wants to recruit from this list has received a certain quota, meaning a certain number of people that they can recruit off that list. And initially, these quota are fixed, and the institutions cannot recruit more people than the quota allocated to them in the beginning of this recruitment process. However, after a certain time, this quota may be lifted, and then institutions can recruit more staff from the list than initially allocated. And indeed, if institutions want to recruit translators off this list for another position, they can do so. It is allowed to do so. Now, your chances of being recruited as in another position in the beginning are quite low because you have been tested for your translation skills. So chances are high that your first position will be a translator's position. Now, if you, as a candidate or as a successful candidate, I must say, are on this list and you are offered another job, you can take it, of course. Also, if you are offered the job as a translator in a certain, say, institution that is not your dream institution, that's not the one you had in mind, it's again a personal choice for you to say, look, I take this job or I don't. You can just not take it and stay on the list and wait for another opportunity. However, my personal suggestion would be to still take the job, even if it's not your dream job at first, because, and we've said it all, through internal mobility, you can, once you are inside, once you are part of the family, you can, through internal mobility, move in and out to any job of your dream in the years to come. But that's again a personal assessment you have to make, of course.
Yeah, if I can add to that, the reason I was saying yes, yes, yes is because what sometimes happens with translation competitions, this has happened in the past, not just for English, but also with the Croatian translation competitions, is there will be people who are already in the institution's bubble on temporary contracts or working as contract agents who will do a translator competition because the numbers are fewer than for the generalist competitions. So because they're already in the bubble, they've already got a job. Maybe their manager is just waiting for them to pass a permanent competition, any permanent competition, and then they can get recruited off the list. Of course, once we've had our first pick of the translators. Another thing, sorry, that jumped into my head earlier, I see that EPSO is also planning a lawyer linguist competition in March 2025. So for any of you there who have got a law degree and languages, then that would be another wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And there's nothing stopping you. As Kuhn said, each competition is its own unit. So you could apply for that at the same time as applying for, you could apply for this translator competition now between now and Monday, and then you can also apply for the lawyer linguist competition in March, and will be even fewer numbers going for that because that is a rare thing to have a law degree and excellent language skills. So now I'll again hand the floor over to someone else.
Great, thanks, Audrey. I'll just ask two last final snap questions before I give closing remarks. So, one question is, do applicants have to have their work experience validated by their previous employers to make the initial application by the 14th of January? And where are the most of the translation positions in EU institutions located? Will it be Brussels or in other locations?
So regarding professional experience, first of all, for this competition, we do not require professional experience. So just having a degree is good enough. Of course, if you do have professional experience, do mention it, right? And for your current job, because you're always asked for a starting date and an ending date of your professional experience in the application form. For your current job, as ending date, you put the date of validating your application. Then we know, you're currently doing that job. But indeed, do mention it, because I said upfront as well, when it comes to recruitment, of course, your CV comes into play there. Your second question about where do most translators work? Actually, is it Luxembourg, Laura? It's Brussels still?
Well, it depends on the institution. In the European Parliament, most of our staff in DG for translation are based in Luxembourg. We have over 1,000 staff that are based in Luxembourg. For the European Commission, we also have language units here. I'm not sure exactly which ones. There are certain languages that are based in Luxembourg, but others are based in Brussels. There's also the CDT, the Centre de Traduction, that are based in Luxembourg. The Court of Auditors as well are based in Luxembourg. They have small translation units. Is there anyone else? There's also the Court of Justice, but that wouldn't be relevant to this competition because it's lawyer linguists. I think most of them are based in Brussels for the Commission, Audrey. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
We have 1/3 of our staff in Luxembourg. It's mostly the new languages, languages that for countries that joined post 2004, with the exception of Irish, but Bulgarian, Polish, Lithuanian, all of those staff would be based in Luxembourg, but all the council translators and as I said, 2/3 of the Commission translators are based in Brussels, and the Committee of the Regions and the European Social Committee, but those are very small institutions like the Court of Auditors. I wanted to say one more thing, but it's gone from my head. Never mind.
Perfect. We'll forgive you for that. Before good closing remarks, would there be anyone else, Audrey, Laura, or Kuhn, would like to say anything final? Do you think it might be additionally useful for people who are watching?
One thing I'd like to add is when you're preparing for the competition, it might be a good idea to look at texts that come from newspapers that are known for really high quality journalism. So if you have, like, I don't know, French as your L2, maybe read articles from Le Monde, because they have articles that concern current affairs. I'm not sure I can't say what kind of language they will use or what kind of text they would use, but in general, we would recommend to trainees and to temporary agents to practice using these news sources that are known for high quality journalism. So in French, it would be Le Monde, German, Die Zeit, Italian, La Repubblica. These very well known newspapers that are well regarded for their journalism. That's maybe one way to practice. And also, I would say, don't neglect your mother tongue, your target language for the competition. Like, it's very easy, and it's also understandable to want to focus on improving your language skills in your L2 and your L3, but also make sure that you do have the accuracy in the English language, that you are up to date with all the terminology, that you are able to that you do know punctuation well and all the mechanics of the language. So it's important to spend a lot of time with that. We are native speakers, but sometimes maybe we're not so aware of the pernickety kind of mechanics of the language. So I think that's something to be aware of as well.
Okay, yes, no, I've got remembered, sorry, as well, what I wanted to say about the professional experience for the person who asked that question. you don't have to let your employer know that you're applying for the job now. You would be asked to submit your supporting documentation. If you claim professional experience, you have to submit that by the 10th of April, and their payslips will do. It doesn't have to be a signed letter from your employer. But yeah, so my tips then also for the exams, for the translation exam, finish the text. Points will be docked if you don't finish the whole translation. So you can't be scored on what you haven't done. So do at least a draft of everything. It's a test without dictionaries because we will have some tourists using this as a backdoor. So we want you to be able to show off your translation skills, translate the meaning, not just the words. That's why we're eliminating dictionaries, so that people can't sort of use fancy dictionaries to work around stop gaps in what they're doing. In the revision text, don't just look out for ways to improve the language of the translation, but look for inaccuracies. Are there dates wrong? Are there items missing from lists? Are there typos? Are there numbers wrong? These sort of things that as a translator, you need to be very accurate to the original. And as Laura said, very, very relevantly, you absolutely have to be able to write to a good standard. We're looking out for spelling mistakes. We're looking out for bad grammar. That's not acceptable. Those things will get you eliminated. Obviously, an occasional slip up is we're all human. Perfection is not attainable, but you know, you want to be sure you're getting the meaning, and it's better to be vague than to be absolutely wrong. But yeah, good luck. The numbers have never been as in your favor. We've never had a reserve list of 126 before. There's no assessment centre this time around. There's no group exercise. There's no presentation. The lists are likely to be extended, as Cone said, for several years. This is the best opportunity I think there's ever been. You can't have any language combination in theory. We'd absolutely love to be getting people who are offering things like, you know, maybe Estonian and Lithuanian and those kind of things, but any combination is theoretically possible.
Maybe a final word from my end as well on the testing environment. So you heard me say this is a remote testing, right? So you sit your tests basically from home. Now, you would think that this gives room to cheating, right? But we want to avoid cheating. And that is why the test environment is quite strict. You will find on our homepage a couple of links to pages on the requirements, the technical requirements you need to sit your tests. Also a number of do's and don'ts. I'll give you some examples. First of all, you will have to download a kind of an application that is then the test environment in which you will work, which will block you off the internet, of course. As I said already, you cannot have any dictionaries, you cannot have any material on your table. You will be asked before you sit the tests to show with your webcam that you are alone in the room. You will even have to show, I'm not kidding you, that there's no one hiding under your table. You will have to show that there's no one there. I mean, it is quite strict. You cannot have, well, you can have a glass of water in a transparent container, not in, you know, a cup or so. So everything is quite strict. You cannot have any paper or pens on your table. You will have access to an online scratch pad and an online calculator to sit your reasoning tests. But make sure you know this all up front, that you're not cut off or already eliminated before you really get started. So have a look at those pages where we really list everything you should do and should not do. Make sure you have the right equipment available to sit your tests. For instance, you cannot have a wireless mouse. Your mouse must be connected to your laptop. So all these little things, you have to know them up front. They're all listed, but make sure you're aware of them. Okay, that's my final word. Good luck for this competition.
Thanks, Cohen. Thanks for that. And yeah, I would agree with Cohen to definitely follow the procedures and to be fully aware of what's needed. Certainly the Department of Foreign Affairs wouldn't advise you to hide anyone under your tables while you're doing the tests. So try to avoid that. So with that, I'll bring this webinar to a close. Before I'm doing so, I would like to thank our speakers. So a sincere thank you to Audrey and Laura for sharing their experiences of working as translators in institutions, for Cohen for providing his insight into the selection process and the specific competition. I would again also suggest watching Cohen's videos on the EPSO YouTube webpage. They're very, very helpful. They'll go through the process again, just so to make things clear for you. Thanks to my colleague, Sinead McGuire, for organising the logistics for this webinar. She's based in the rep here with me in Brussels. I've certainly found it very interesting, and I'm sure has been useful for those of you watching. I know I've mentioned that we're leading up to the Irish presidency in 2026 in the last 6 months, and having more Irish people working as translators in the institutions would always be a net positive for us, particularly during those 6 months. And even though this competition isn't looking for Irish speakers, I would encourage those of you who are Gaeilgeoirs and have 2 other languages, please do apply. And because that language is important to us, particularly during the presidency, and having people who speak Irish within institutions would just be so advantageous to us, or having more, I should say. So I hope this webinar has offered encouragement to all of you who have joined us online. And again, I'd like to thank you everyone for their interest in this event. To reiterate again, the Department of Foreign Affairs and us here at the REP do provide training and support to Irish candidates who apply for EU jobs. So please do get in touch with us once you have confirmation of the tests, and we can see what supports we can provide to you. And we've always gotten positive feedback on the testing supports we do provide in terms of the practice materials, and people have said that has been very helpful to them in getting through to the next stages. So I would also encourage you to check our EU Careers website on ireland.ie and EU Jobs, which goes into further details of careers within the EU and the supports we provide. There are other avenues for you to get into institutions and use your language skills. And again, if you apply for any of these roles or other EU roles, please do contact us at eujobs@dfa.ie, and we'd be more than happy to guide you through any processes or link you to resources. So if you'd like to rewatch some of the webinar or share with someone you know, it will be available on the DFA YouTube or Department of Foreign Affairs YouTube account very shortly. And you can also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn at EU Jobs Ireland to keep up to date with all our upcoming events and various opportunities. And I believe Audrey mentioned that there will be a lawyer linguist competition coming up. So for those of you who are on the law background and doing languages, this will be another excellent opportunity for you to perhaps be interested in, or we will be having a webinar on that in the coming months. So again, thanks again for all joining us today. And Kuan, Audrey, and Nora, thank you so much for